Hi, I'm Rich Erickson, one of the solutions engineers here at SpectraTel. Today, we're going to go through the MAS360 mobile device management portal. MAS360 mobile device management software, how it operates, and some of the features and things that you can do inside of it. Primarily, an MDM is designed to control a mobile device. It's not designed to control software or access to software or applications. It controls the device. So in the grand scheme of things, what you're looking to do is make sure that your users are using the devices in a manner that you see fit for your company and prevent them from doing things that you don't want them to do. And this software is designed to do that. And we'll go through how that works, all of the features and functions, and how you can use this software to provide more security in your mobile devices. So this is the home screen. This is where you land after you log in. And this screen just provides you with some basic information, alerts, and things about your environment. Right here at the top is the Alert Center. You can see there's several alerts here. Things like any recent activity, how many devices you have jailbroken, any risky apps you may have, or phones with high data usage, things like that. And if you point at them, you'll see it gives you a brief overview of what the alert is. So you'll see this long activity. If I point at it, it says one device is not reported in the last 7 days. I can delete this alert. I can actually locate the device by clicking the locate button, or I can edit the alert here. If I want to add or change an alert, I can go to the add alert button here, pick what it is I want to do based on some conditions, give the alert a name, and then it will start alerting and showing this screen just like these alerts do. Down below, it's just some alerts on maybe some updates that are missing off of the phones. You can see that I've got one device that's missing some iOS patches, and that's just alerting me to those. And then over to the right is more of just the informational thing. How many devices do we have in the system? How many users are in the system? And we'll show the differentiation between a device and a user. How many applications are published by the portal? And if we are publishing any documentation, how many documents are published, and then any activity that's going on will show in the feed. Under devices, you'll see that there's some choices here. We'll go to inventory first and talk about this. Underneath inventory, this is going to be a list of all of the devices in your corporation. You can see I've got one device here. It's called iPhone. It's going to give you the name of the device, whatever the device is called. So if I were to name this SpectraTel iPhone, it would show as SpectraTel iPhone. It's going to show you the user that's associated with that device, and I'll show you users in a few minutes. It's going to tell you what platform it is. This is an Apple device. It's going to tell you the model number, what operating system it is on, what date it was installed, and some various other information. Right here underneath it, if I click View, it's going to bring me to a screen of that one specific device that has a whole bunch of information on it. The email address of the user, the IMEI of the device ID, a bunch of different security information. Is it jailbroken or rooted? What policy is applied to it? And we'll talk about policies in a little bit. And then if it's associated with a phone number, it's going to give me that phone number information down here at the bottom, along with the carrier that it's associated with. Back at the inventory screen, I can locate this device simply by clicking on the locate button. It's actually going to locate the device for me. So I'm locating this device, and it's going to show me currently where the device is. You can see here it's located at our South Carolina office. And if the device is offline, it's going to show you its last known location. So this device you saw back on the home screen has been offline for the last 7 days. However, it is still showing me the last known location of the device. If I want to send the device a message, I can click on the message button right here, and I can type in a message. and hit continue, and it's going to send that device that message. If I want to send a message to multiple devices, if I had a list of devices here, I could simply click the check mark for each device that I wanted to select, or I could click the checkbox at the top and it's going to select all of the devices. Then I click send a message and send my same message, and it's going to send that message to all devices. That's useful if you've got information that you need to send to all of your corporate users, maybe some information about an office closure or some disaster recovery type information or whatever the case may be. You can send it to all users via that message button. Or more, there are several different choices here. I can lock the device. If I click lock, that user will no longer be able to use that device for anything except 911. They'll still be able to make an emergency call. They just can't use the device for anything else. It can buzz the device. That's similar to find the device. So regardless of whether the phone is in silent mode or whatever the case may be, I can send a tone to that device to help them find it. Should they drop it behind a seat or they lose it, whatever the case may be, you can send a tone to that device so they can locate it. I can quickly distribute an app. You typically would distribute an app through the app catalog and the app policies, but if I needed to quickly send an app to this device, I could do it. I can change the policy on the device, and I'll show you policies in a few minutes and how they work. I can reapply a policy set. I can change a rule set, and we'll talk about rule sets in a little bit. Or I can hide this device from the system. Let's talk about enrollments. So when you're enrolling a device into the system, you actually will pick a method. You can either send it to the user's email address. They can open that on the phone and click the link. It could be a PC device, but typically we're talking about mobile devices here. Or the preferred method as far as mobile devices is concerned is to send it an SMS message, and they click the link and that enrolls the device. When you have devices that are pending enrollment, they will be listed in this screen, and it gives you a status as to their enrollment process. Either they've been enrolled, they're pending an enrollment, or some sort of error happened while the user was attempting to enroll the device. So if you're enrolling multiple devices, you come into this screen and you'll see a status that maybe it says pending enrollment. Then you can go back to those users and say, hey, you need to click the link in the SMS that we sent you so that you can enroll that device. If there are some that are in error status, then you just go back and clean up the errors or re-enroll those. And then, of course, the ones that have successfully enrolled, you know that they are done. Groups. You can set groups for devices based on any number of things: job function, accounting group, pay status groups, things like that. If you've got maybe an executive committee group that you want to have different policies applied to than your normal standard users, you could create a group down here and apply policies based on that group. And I'll show you how to do that in a little bit. Or maybe you've got different application sets based on the user groups. So your standard user group gets a few applications, but your accounting group gets some additional applications that work on the accounting software. You can create groups down here to quickly manage those folks. Next, let's talk about users. Users, if we go to the Groups tab, we're going to see the same screen that we just saw. So I can add users to groups in here and create and edit groups while I'm inside of this screen, or I can do that from inside of the Devices tab. But what we're really looking at under users is the directory of users in the system. You can see I've got two accounts associated here. This is my account, and I've got a single phone tied to this account. And then I have a test account here just to have a second account for testing. But if I hit view, this brings up the information about the user, the full name, what domain they're tied to, their status in my organization, email address, the phone number associated with them, what groups they belong to, They could belong to multiple groups, and what devices are assigned to them. I could have multiple devices assigned to this person. So if I had an iPhone and a tablet assigned to myself, then both of those would show here. If I were to click on iPhone here, it's going to take me back to that screen we were in previously with all the information about the phone. One of the things you can do in this screen is you can set up a managed Apple ID or a managed Google account for the user. So if I want the user to use a specific managed Apple ID instead of using their own personal ID, then I would set a managed Apple ID right here in this field, and everything associated with this user account and this device that's assigned to me in the portal is going to use that managed Apple ID. So for downloading applications or access to an app catalog, it's going to use the managed Apple ID rather than their personal Apple ID. And then for backing up data off of the device, rather it going to their personal Apple ID and account, it's going to go to their company-controlled managed Apple ID. Also inside of here, I can add a device to the user. So if I needed to add an additional device to the user, I would click this button here. If I need to add them to a different group, I would add that here. I can reset their password, and that's going to be their portal password. I can reset that right here because they can access this and see different information about their device and their setup. I can deactivate this user. So if I need to get the user out of the system, I can deactivate them right here. Over here, I can change the authentication type that they use. I can delete the user from the system, or I can look at their history. Under the Security tab, this is where we set the policies that control the device. So inside of here will be all of the policies that we build to control the various types of devices. Right now, all we have in here is basically iOS and Windows policies, but we can import and maintain Android policies as well. The test iOS policy is the one that I use on this device. So we're going to go in there simply by clicking the View tab, and this is going to bring us into the actual policy. So inside of here is where we make all of the changes. There are a ton of options that you have inside of here. We won't talk about all of them, but I'll hit some highlights of things that are very useful. But if you need information, we can do a detailed demonstration for you to show you all of the options that are available in here. So I'm going to go ahead and click the edit button, and I'm going to click this configure password policy, and you'll see that it expands out and gives us the ability to set a bunch of parameters here. So if I wanted to put a passcode on this phone and enforce a passcode, which will force the user to put a passcode in, I can select this policy, and then I can go in here and set the parameters. Do I want it to be alphanumeric? How many characters do I want it to have in there? Do I want to require a special character? How old can the password be? Do I want it to change every 90 days, or maybe I want it to change every 30 days? I can set my idle time. How many unique passwords do they have to use? And what this means is this number is 5 currently in here. They cannot use the same password within 5 password changes. So they have to come up with something unique 5 times in a row before they can go back and use the first one. Then down here at the bottom, how many failed passcode attempts before it locks the device and they've got to call somebody? You may not want it to have any, so you can clear that. But if I wanted them to have 5 chances to get the passcode right before it locks the device, then that's what I'd set in there. Under restrictions, this is where we can change a lot of different settings. Do I want them to have managed and unmanaged apps? What that means is, do I want them to have apps that I deploy to them only, which is a managed application? Do I want them to only have applications that are managed, meaning I deployed them to them? Or do I want to allow them to install applications on their own? Do I want them to be able to use the camera or FaceTime? All of these options I can set inside of the restrictions. Down under applications, this is where I can restrict YouTube. Do I want them to use YouTube on this phone? Do I want them to be able to download iTunes Media and use Safari? Again, more choices here than we need to explain during this demonstration. If you need a more detailed demo, let us know and we'll be happy to set that up. Here's where I set up iCloud. Do I want to allow iCloud backup? Do I want to allow them to use their keychain? Do I want to sync documents? Application compliance. So I can set restricted applications, meaning I want to block certain applications. If I leave it up to the user to decide what applications they want, however, I want to block some applications, I can do that via this screen. Do I want to require applications? I can do that via this screen. So if I require them to have a certain application, then I would put that in here and it would require them to install the application. We're going to skip over active sync. That's not very often used anymore, but if they were doing active sync between a PC and the device, you would set that up in here. Wi-Fi is very useful for securing your Wi-Fi network. What happens when you hand out the security for your Wi-Fi network, meaning, hey, here's the username or the passcode to get onto our Wi-Fi, your users have a tendency to start bringing other devices into the mix. If you give them the keys to get into your Wi-Fi, they can put their personal phone in it. They can put their personal computer on it. They can tie their Apple Watch to your Wi-Fi. You can prevent them from doing that and still allow them to use their corporate phones or their personal phones on the Wi-Fi without giving them the codes by simply setting this up in here to allow the device to connect to the Wi-Fi automatically. So when they walk into one of your locations, it looks to see if this Wi-Fi that you set up in here is available. If it is, it connects them to it, and they're none the wiser to the passcodes to get into the network. The same thing with a VPN. If they're required to connect to a corporate VPN to get to data, then you can set that in here, again, without giving them the keys to be able to connect with any device they so choose. So if this were a tablet, and I wanted them to connect to the VPN to get to some corporate information, I can set this up in there so that when they log into the tablet, it connects to the VPN and gives them access to the information without giving them the keys to connect to the VPN so that they can do it on another device. We can set up AirPrint, and we can configure Google accounts if they need Google accounts and things like that. Under advanced settings, I can connect their email account for them automatically. Instead of giving them a list of instructions to connect their corporate or personal devices to their email account and having to help them or assist them with setting that up when they have trouble, I can do that in here automatically. So I can go in here and set these settings up, and it's going to connect them automatically to their email account. I can make changes to their cellular network in here if I need to. So if I want to change their roaming settings, hotspots, all sorts of settings are in here. Do I want to limit it to a certain carrier? Things like that. I can do all of that inside of this software here. There are a lot of settings in here. If you want detailed information about any of these settings, let us know and we'll set up a guided tour of how these settings all work. Inside of here, I can set up home screens. I can put iPad wallpapers in if you want to choose a wallpaper. So let's say you've got a corporate device and you want to put your corporate wallpaper in there. I can force that in here so that the user can't put their own wallpaper in. I can set up Bluetooth settings, all sorts of things in here. Once I have this policy built, then I can assign it to a device. And you'll see I clicked on the assignments tabs here, and you can see that policy is assigned to one device. And I'll show you how we did that in just a minute. If I make changes, to the policy, and the policy is currently published, but then I'm making changes, it's going to give me the ability to review the changes that I made before I actually saved them. At the beginning, when I started showing you this, I changed the passcode configuration, and you can see that it was a no, and now I have changed it to yes. So it's showing me that I've modified this. Application compliance, since I've made a change to the policy, I have not yet published it, but it's still going to show me, hey, there is a device that is not compliant to this policy and the change you've made. And it's going to show you the actual portion of the policy that it's not compliant with. So since I made that passcode change back when we first started looking at this, and I didn't publish it to the device, that device is not compliant yet. Now, once I publish it and I send it out and the device updates itself, then it should roll into compliance. Then under advanced, you can see this is actually under this cellular portion, since it has to do with the device. That configure advanced settings screen, I opened it up and I made a change and I didn't publish it. So therefore the device is not compliant yet. Okay, so the next thing we're going to look at is compliance rules. So when we talk about compliance, underneath here, we can create multiple rules in case we have a rule for different devices or different groups that we want to assign different types of rules to. We can do that here. You can see I've got one rule created. We're going to go ahead and edit that rule so we can take a look at what it does. So inside of here is where I do things like enforce enrollment in the system. So if I were to enforce this enrollment, once I send the enrollment request and the user clicks the enrollment tab or the enrollment link and the device is enrolled, the user can no longer unenroll the device. So you'll see here, it says to make sure that all of the devices are enrolled in the MDM and has not been disabled or removed by the user. So if I click that button right there, it's going to enforce the enrollment, and it's going to tell me if the user tries to disable or remove it. I can enforce OS versions, encryptions, and all sorts of things. Do I want to enforce a jailbroken policy? If I say yes, what happens if they jailbroke the device? It's going to remove it from any access to applications and data. Geofencing is a great one for things like PCI compliance or HIPAA compliance. Let's say you've got corporate devices and you own a medical facility and you want to shut down the recording devices in the phone when they walk into your facilities. You create a geofencing policy that says once they come into the geofence area, do certain things. I can alert, I can selectively wipe the phone, or I can change the policy. And this is what we want to do. We want to change the policy. So let's say when they walk into your locations, you want to shut the camera off. So I'm going to create another iOS policy and I name it something like maybe the name of the location or camera disable or something like that. And then I'm going to select change policy. I'm going to select the policy to change it to, and then I'm going to have it notify either me or the user, or maybe send them a message. And then when they walk into that location, it's going to change the policy that turns the camera off. When they leave the location, it's going to change that policy back to the normal policy. Monitoring rules, I can set this up to monitor things like SIM changes. If the user changes the SIM card in it, it's going to monitor that and tell me. If they have roaming charges or they change their roaming states, we can tell that in here or have it alert us. If they change their OS version, we can have it alert us to that. Again, there are a lot of changes and things we can do in here. I'm not going to go through them all. If you want detailed information, please let us know and we'll set up a custom demo. Underneath apps, this is where we set up the applications that are published to the phone. I'm going to go to Catalog. And you'll see I've got a couple of applications in here. I've got Google Chrome, Zoom Workplace, and Microsoft Teams. These are probably some common applications that every phone should probably get. The way I add an application into that is to click the Add button here, and then I pick the type of application it is. It might be a Mac OS type application, or it might be just an iOS application. And I'm typically going to do it via the App Store. And then I'm just going to type in the name of the application. So I typed YouTube, it's going to do some searching, and then it brings up all of the applications that match what you type in there. So if YouTube was the application that I wanted, then I would simply select YouTube, hit add, and it's going to put that application in here. I need to put in my password. And then it's going to put the application in the list. And you can see YouTube is here now. I can view the application and make some changes to it. Do I want to restrict its data backup on YouTube? Do I want to restrict its data backup on iTunes? And what that means is, do I want that data that's collected by YouTube in the iTunes backup if I'm doing iTunes backups? Do I want to remove the application once I've stopped distributing it? What that means is, if I distribute the application to the device and I decide later I want to remove that application from a specific policy or group, is it going to leave that application installed on the device, or do I want to pull that application once I stop distributing it? If I click on remove on stopping distribution, if I remove MDM control, it's going to also remove the application. And this is useful for applications that you have to pay for. So you pay for a number of licenses for an application and you distribute it to the user. And when you remove the MDM control from that user's device, you also want to recoup that license. So you select this and it will remove that application once the MDM control has been removed from the device. This is useful for maybe a BYOD deployment of applications, where you deploy an application that's paid for by the company to a user's personal device. And then when that user leaves the company and you remove MDM from them, you want to pull that application off their device. This is useful for doing that. Application bundles. If I were to create an app bundle, this is similar to creating a group. So I create a bundle of applications, and I can do that by selecting the bundle, giving it a name, and then putting the applications in there. So let's say I have a finance group, and then I want to put an icon on it, and I can pick whatever icon I want. And then I put in the applications that I want to distribute to that finance group. So let's say the finance group gets Word, Excel, PowerPoint on their phones or their tablets, and they also get the ADP application. So I'm going to put those into a bundle, and then I can distribute that bundle to the finance group to quickly deploy 5 or 6 or more applications without having to deploy a single application to every device over and over. So I can deploy them as bundles. Documents can create content libraries. So if I had a folder that I wanted the users to be able to access and get the documents out of that folder, I can set that up inside of here. You can also set sources for documentation or information. So if I had a OneDrive, a Google Drive, maybe a SharePoint site that I wanted to publish to the user's device, I can do that in here simply by selecting the type of share and then putting in the information for that share site. Earlier, we talked about groups. When we were looking at devices and users, we talked about groups. So let's talk about why groups are important. Let's say I go into the app catalog here, and I've got a group of 500 phones, and I want to distribute Google Chrome to those 500 phones. So I could select distribute here, and then I can pick a specific device, and I would have to pick that specific device 500 times. I create a group and I put those devices, those 500 devices in that group, and then I select the group and I distribute it, and it distributes it to all of the devices in that group. In here, I can also select install automatically. And what that means is it's going to install the device without the user's intervention. I can select retry in case it fails and how many times it retries it, and then send an email with the status to the administrator and the user. So what happens if I don't what happens if I don't install automatically? What's going to happen is it's going to send a notice to the user that says, hey, you have several applications available for distribution. Do you want to install them? And they say yes, and it installs them. I would rather select install automatically, let it retry a few times, and that way it installs without the user's intervention. Then you only have to deal with those that fail for some reason. You're going to get an email that tells you that they failed. About reports for a minute. Obviously, there are a lot of reports in here. We can do more detailed demonstrations of them, but I'm going to give you a high-level overview here, and we'll just talk about a couple of them. So we'll look at hardware inventory because this is a useful one to see how many devices you have in your inventory and some information about them. So how many devices by manufacturer? You can see that I've got one Apple device, got one iOS device. I can look at it from that perspective. I can change these reports so that they only show one piece of information, like it's over 10 gigabyte used. And then it's going to give me a list down here of the device that meets this criteria. If I go back and I want to see how many do I have in Apple, I'm going to click this and it shows me I've got one Apple device, and here's that list. If I had Apples and Androids and Windows devices, then I'm going to have various columns in here that show I've got one Apple, 5 Android, and 100 Windows devices. And again, I'm not going to go through every one of these reports. If you want a detailed demonstration, just arrange that with us and we'll be happy to set one up for you. That was the high-level overview of the MAS360 MDM. Please don't hesitate to let us know if you have any questions, if we need to dive deeper or give you a more focused demo. Just know that this application is available to you, either us providing you the licensing and letting you manage it, or we can provide you the license and we can manage it for you, as well as other components of managed mobility services.